really emphasize that sort of unique brochure or trail map or whatever that is hard to pick up and might be available in a variety of different places, and we're trying to bring them all together here. Brochures from the Department of Natural Resources, state park information, national forest, ranger district, special hiking information, that kind of thing.
Travel advice is no longer limited to guidebooks and brochures, though. The Internet carries a wealth of information, if you know the right sites.
Well, we have recently debuted a class that we are teaching to the public called Traveling on the Web. And what we're trying to do in that class is basically give people an overall orientation to what's available on the web about travel. It's such a huge area on the Internet. It's almost overwhelming about what's available. And so we're trying to steer people to starter sites or the sort of global travel directories that would have information about how to get to a destination information, all of these things that I've spoken about relative to the aspects of travel planning that people are interested in.
So the next time you're planning a trip, whether it's to Hong Kong or just the Issaquah Alps, be sure and check out the library's resources.
Well, it started out with the interest over the movie has, of course, created a lot of interest on anything about the Titanic. And I got a reference question where a person wanted to know what the largest single family of people who were lost on the Titanic was. And so I was looking through everything I could find to see what we had that might list survivors of the Titanic, and came across in our local ship file, even though the Titanic was certainly not a local ship, a reference to a report from U.S. Congress on the loss of the Titanic. We are a depository for federal documents, and we get a complete series of House and Senate U.S. congressional publications called the serial set. And basically they're big fat volumes, quite often, of unrelated documents jumbled together until they fill a volume, and then they publish another volume. And among in this particular volume, there's a series. It starts out with pensions and increase of pensions for certain soldiers and sailors of Civil War. And then in the middle of it is an investigation into the loss of the SS Titanic by the U.S. Senate Committee on Commerce. They interviewed everybody from the president of the steamship company on down. There's a list of witnesses I found was interesting because some of the witnesses were like cabin stewards and a bar steward and things like that. So I mean, they were interviewing crew of every type and so on about it. So I was kind of surprised to see that the federal government had been involved in this investigation. We think of investigations of modern disasters. You see it like the Pan Am flights, and any of those disasters. Their investigations go on reconstructing planes and everything else in an attempt to find out why and to avoid it happening again in the future and so on. And in 1912 they were doing the same thing.
We're here with Nancy Pearl, Director of the Center for the Book here at the Seattle Public Library, with more book recommendations for this month. Welcome, Nancy.
Thanks, Sharon.
Good. Keeping with our travel theme for this month's show, you have a wonderful travel book, which I've also read.
Oh, good. It's called Terra Incognita, Travels in Antarctica, by a woman named Sarah Wheeler, who actually went to Antarctica as part of the National Science Foundation's program to encourage not just scientists to go, but also writers and artists. And she was a writer, had written 2 previous travel books, and always had this desire, as I think many of us do, to sort of go to a place, the last unexplored place left. And this is her experiences. What I liked about the book is what a great travel companion Sarah Wheeler is. I always like it when people don't take themselves as seriously as they might, and she certainly can laugh at herself and can look at herself in a very, very realistic way and make mistakes and ooh and ah and all the things that we might do if we went to Antarctica.
Right. I really enjoyed the way that I think Antarctica kind of got into her blood, and so it really chronicles 3 journeys that she went through. And I think it is interesting when you go to a place that is so unusual, how it becomes a part of you and how you never really are the same again.
And I think that's what she found. And it seems to me that one of the points she's making in this book, and she talks about the other great explorers, Ernest Shackleton, and she talks about how Antarctica got into their blood as well, and they were never the same afterwards.
Right, right. And then I love the details that she put into it, the historical things, but also what she wore, what she had to bring along, you know, how she went to the bathroom even. I mean, all the things that you would really want to know.
And the people that she met, those interesting people who spend months and months and months there and just, I think, go a little bit nuts, which I think would probably be the state of most of us who spent all that time.
Right. She visits the other thing, the interesting thing too about visiting the different camps, the Italians and the New Zealanders, and you get the flavor of what each country is like by visiting the camp.
Yeah, and it's almost like a miniature United Nations. All of these people have their part in Antarctica. And they all think, and the love that they all have for it was so fascinating to read. And one of the things I think that's so appealing about this book is the wonderful picture on the cover with the penguins walking along, which is how we all think, I think we all think about Antarctica in those terms.
And she, you know, comments a lot about the weather being not that terribly cold. You know, she'll think, oh, it's very balmy today. It was a little bit above zero. Which, you know, everything is relative, I guess, when you travel.
Absolutely.
Right. It's a wonderful travel book because it will take you to a place that, and describe it so vividly, a place that probably not many of us will go.
And isn't that a shame that we can't go there?
Right. The next book you have for us is a different sort of collection of letters.
This is a wonderful collection of letters. It's called Dear Genius, The Letters of Ursula Nordstrom. And Ursula Nordstrom was the children's editor at Harper & Row from 1940 to 1973. And she always referred to the authors and illustrators that she was working with when she wrote them letters, and it was all done by letters. There was, of course, no email, or she was a great letter writer. She always started her letters as Dear Genius. And Ursula Nordstrom, I think, defined the middle of the 20th century for children's literature. She is the person who is responsible for Laura Ingalls Wilder's books and choosing the illustrator, who we associate now with Laura Ingalls Wilder. She published Goodnight Moon. There's letters in here to Margaret Wise Brown. She published Curious George. This is a woman who had her hand in all the children's books that are still in print and classics today. And what a wonderful backlist that is for Harper & Row.
What would the letters contain? What
the
kind
letters,
of advice?
they're questions to the author or the illustrator. What did you think about this? The illustrations that this one particular person did. She sometimes says, "This I think didn't work for me. This is what I would want you to do in this place." There's wonderful letters between Ursula Nordstrom and Maurice Sendak about where the wild things are, and In the Night Kitchen, and how pleased she says how pleased Maurice Sendak should feel because In the Night Kitchen is such a remarkable book, she says. There's a terrific letter in here to a young girl who had written to Harper & Row after this little girl read Charlotte's Web. And she wrote and said she just didn't think that Charlotte, the spider, should die. And Ursula Nordstrom wrote back and said to her, "You know, when I read the book, I didn't think that Charlotte should die either. And one of the things that the book does is teach us that things come to an end." And that letter was so typical of someone who takes children's books seriously and respects others, no matter what age they are, who take children's books seriously.
Is this a book that people who write children's books or aspiring writers of children's books would enjoy?
I think so. I think this has a far-ranging appeal. I hadn't thought of writers or illustrators for children's books, but I think yes, because Ursula Nordstrom was this very, very important person. I think parents who are interested in what books to get their children from the library or to purchase for their children could do much worse than to just take every book that Ursula Nordstrom was responsible for bringing out and using those books as a reading tool, as a reading guide. She worked with E.B. White on Charlotte's Web and on Stuart Little. we won't see the likes of her again. I don't think. I think that publishing has changed too much since the early 1970s that no one person can have that much influence and create that many books that are going to live forever, as Ursula Nordstrom did.
Great. Thank you so much, Nancy. Great recommendations for this month. Thanks for joining us again. I'm here with Nancy Pearls, Director of the Center of the Book here at the Seattle Public Library. And learned a little bit more about your library. I'm Sharon Griggins. Thanks for watching.
I'll let you guys come in. Right on it.
Well, leave though, that would be good either.
That's all we need is just like a head. Just there.
Is that your move? No. Food.
Yo, leopard. Okay, why don't you walk down and off the path here, just and kind of get around the fence right over here, see if they do anything. See if they think you're a piece of meat.
Here, go stick your finger in the fence.
Right around that light pole there. Yeah, it's working. Keep going. Right there.
Here, look at the leopard.
Who was it, Emily? Can you see how? Do you see how he's watching everything up there? Yeah, there's another stroller too. They're in their cage. Yeah, they might be.
Zach Schultzenfreund.
So are you hyphenating?
Are there a lot of hyphenateds in your class?
Not too many.
Okay.
And so you're mainly seen by this camera. So
Okay.
Kind of look cheat to there. No.
And you could be looking at Sharon. Okay. Ready? Okay.
My second guest is Zach Schultzenfreund from Hyla Middle School in far-off Bainbridge Island. Welcome.
Right. Now, Nancy.
Uh-oh. And that kind of looked like you're on the Tonight Show for a minute there, Zach.
What were you like, Zach?
Who watched Survivor?
I watched the last
Did you?
part. It's
God.
cruel, terrible.
The fat guy won. The fat naked guy. The fat, bald, naked guy, isn't that what they called
mean
it?
guy.
The mean guy, yeah.
No, I thought the personal trainer won, the 36-year-old one.
No, she didn't.
No, he.
No, the fat naked guy
Richard.
won.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was the one who's but he's like a personal coach or something.
Yeah.
He's like
Yeah.
from Florida or something.
He
He was mean, wasn't he? He was the mean one, wasn't
It's
he?
a cruel show, but it's addictive.
Isn't that weird?
I didn't watch any.
What my mom did is she went on the internet and she found out against the last 4 people, and then she watched it just because.
I never saw it.
I didn't either.
I just think it's weird.
I think it's awful.
It sounds
It's really
strange.
mean. It's really cool. They do things to just pit people against each other.
Okay.
That's not
Like they
nice.
want everyone to hate each other. Like, yes, you can go have a wonderful breakfast and everyone else has to eat rice, but you can pick one friend and then they'll all hate the person because they
Oh,
didn't pick.
horrible.
Yeah, I think
And
it sounds awful.
yeah.
That's
And
so
the lovely and talented Nancy Pearl from the Center of the Book at the Seattle Public Library. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Sharon.
Okay.
There is a certain smugness we have. It's affected us two ways. One is that the rest of the state isn't doing well economically. If you go to Spokane or the Tri-Cities, if you go to Grace Harbor, Clallam County, you see that the rest of the state has not benefited from the economic growth that's occurred in this metropolitan area. I think for us as a community, there's two things happening simultaneously, which is creating some problems for us, and we'll get through it. We used to be dominated by one city, the city of Seattle, and there was the city of Seattle and then everybody else. Now we're much more of a metropolitan area. The lines are blurred. You begin to see growth, whether it's from Tacoma up through Federal into Seattle, going north. You see the growth on the east side in terms of job development. So we are just learning now how to be a metropolitan area. But we're the most trade-dependent area in the United States, so we're learning how to be global as well. And that transition is very, very difficult. If you're just doing one, if you're just learning how to be a metropolitan area, it would be a challenge, let alone be a metropolitan area and a global center. And you begin to see that in some of the public's attitudes. For instance, if you just get under, it used to be in this community that if you were of the Jewish faith, Catholic, or Protestant, that was the dominant group of faiths here. That's not true anymore. There are more people of no faith or other faiths than there are of those three traditional groups. It used to be if you spoke English only, you were really dominant. Now we're seeing an incredible number of languages here, and we're encouraging it in the high-tech sector in particularly. So the public is being unsettled by this remarkable change that's a global community change. It's other faiths and other languages and other colors and other values and family systems are really new to us, and we're going through that shock. And you hear it when people say, golly, I was on the phone, I can't understand the person you're talking to. Not normally it's my kids, but it is, because I don't understand anything that they say. But we have some real issues. We'll get through them because every community has. But I don't think that the WTO is an example of whether or not we've reached too far. I think that the WTO is an issue of whether or not communities the size of Seattle can handle what I call the new forces of protest nowadays, where you have people coming in and who are increasing, quite frankly, the vigor of their protest. Washington, D.C. was able, I think, brought 3,000 police to bear. And New York City can bring 3,000 police to bear. But if you've been reading the newspapers in California, you can see a great deal of angst in Los Angeles over the Democratic Convention, where the city of Los Angeles is saying we don't have enough police to handle the protests that will occur around the convention. And of course they went to the LA County and tell LA County, we want you to help. And since I was with the LA County Commissioners last week, they're all saying, yeah, well, we told them you pay us, we're there. But I think we were caught by surprise here by what an anarchist would do as an extreme. And we weren't used to that. We were used to another kind of more moderate protest. But I think that the region is changing. It's changing for the better. I don't want to go back to the good old days, quite frankly. I like multiculturalism. I like the diversity in the region. I like the economic growth. We're no longer dependent upon one company. We have a proliferation of companies. This is a great time to live here, and we will get through both becoming a global center and a metropolitan region, and we'll do that pretty easily.
I would add, you're going to hear a word I think more often than we hear it a lot. We should hear it more, and that's the sense of community. We've talked about neighborhoods and downtowns, and that it's the communities that can occur around separate cultures. It's a question of staying in touch with our roots and our commitments to each other and to our community as we go through this rapid change and have to make hard choices. And anything we can do to reinforce that coupled with maintaining the sense of responsibility among all of our citizens, of civil responsibility, of getting engaged, getting an awareness of the issues that we're addressing with, and be involved and be part of the solution rather than complaining about what's not happening or should be happening. It's that spirit that we can't afford to lose.
What a great segue for me to ask a question. Is this on? I hope. Okay. I'm going to start, and anybody else who has a question, please come over here so our 2 TV cameras can be able to pick it up. What's the hardest thing you've each had to learn in elective office, is what I'd like to know.
On the job learning.
On the job learning issues.
Well, I'm not a person that delegates easily. So I've had to learn through trial and error to delegate and trust. It's really hard. When you're on the council, you're in an environment where you're only dealing with 13 other members, and your own immediate staff, and you think you know everything. And then you go to the executive branch, and all of a sudden you find out that you hate the 13 you left, and but you have a whole series of problems you're faced with, and then you got to create an environment by which you can delegate and trust, and that's really hard for me. It's taken a lot of trial and error, and I'm learning to do it better. But it's just to delegate and trust.
I think patience. It takes longer than you think, and the hard balancing that you have to do in our position between competing legitimate cases. There isn't enough money to go around. There are good reasons why you ought to be supporting this group and this group and this group, and how you make those choices, where you find the balance between preserving views and adding density, and understanding the importance of change, at the same time wanting to keep things the way they are in terms of the traditions and cultures. So it's an almost impossible task if you think of it as an executive job. There's no training for running 22 lines of business all at once with limited resources, and still be the chief diplomat and working with 9 other independent elected officials. This is and a very active community with that are very interested in everything you do, and being the entertainment at lunch when you get time in between, and that all of this sort of balancing and trying to find harmony is an immense intellectual challenge. So you do learn on the job. You have to learn patience, and you have to learn to delegate and trust and hold and expect to be held accountable for other people's work. That's life.
We very much want some members of the audience to ask some questions too. We're racing against the clock, so we'd like to hear from you.
This fall, Congress will decide whether to cough up with $500 million to feed sound transit in its efforts to build a 21 to 24 mile streetcar underground. I wonder whether you aren't secretly pleased, or wouldn't be secretly pleased, if Congress does not appropriate this money, because then you wouldn't have to take the buses out of the bus tunnel and put them back on the streets to congest downtown. You wouldn't have to tear up the University of Washington campus. You wouldn't have to dig a tunnel 26 stories deep under Portage Bay. You wouldn't have to disrupt many neighborhoods, and you wouldn't be increasing transit much at all by this plan. It's 21 miles long, costs about $40,000 a foot. So wouldn't you be pleased if Congress does not cough up the $500 million? And second, wouldn't you like to have some of that money to fill the potholes in Seattle streets?
Did everyone hear his question? You didn't give us your name. Would you like to give us your name?
Tom Code.
Okay, thank you for the question. Did everyone hear the question? In essence, it was, you kind of secretly hope you don't get enough federal money so you can get out of all the hassles that are coming your way on sound transit.
No, I think that I know that the City of Seattle and King County and the business community have been going back to Washington, D.C. and lobbying for a full funding agreement. We want the light rail system complete, and we need to complete it. The light rail system offers a spine of which we can make other things more efficient. If you look at light rail and say that's going to be the solution, that's the mistake. But if you say the light rail is a component of a strategy that should occur within the metropolitan area, then it does work very effectively for us in the movement of people. It allows us to redeploy our transit system in terms of hours. We want to get, if it gets past UW, I mean, our key is to get out of UW. UW is not a good stop. It needs to get to Northgate. But once it gets to Northgate, it does make our system more efficient. But don't look at light rail as being the cure-all. That's the mistake we've been making. It is simply a component in a much larger picture of light rail, regional bus, van pool, carpool, bicycle, and increased road capacity.
Absolutely right. And although I will say, I wish that it had been done 30 years ago so we could be using the benefit of it, and that I'm not the mayor stuck with having to see that it happens. But I think we have no choice. And I would only urge, and Ron's right, that it's like building the freeway. We need to build the on-ramps and the neighborhood arterials that get people connected to it, so we create a true system that reaches out into our neighborhoods just like the road system does. And that, so that we're only going to be partly done when we get that done. We're going to be focusing on that, and then integrating even that strategy with our density strategies to put the new housing on those arterials that will give people an option to do public transit that doesn't threaten